Hi everyone, I'm Jessica Luck, editor of C-VILLE Weekly, and welcome to another edition of C-VILLE Live. We're hosting this C-VILLE Live on the morning of the opening of the Virginia Festival of the Book, which is being held over the next 5 days in Charlottesville and Albemarle through Sunday, March 20th. The festival, produced by the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities, is the largest community-based book event in the Mid-Atlantic region, and it's a celebration of books, reading, literary, culture, and literacy. Events being held this week include a variety of author panels, author readings, even a series of events for children known as Story Fest, and Pub Day for aspiring authors. So there's lots to do. Most events are free, and you can find out more information about all the events on the festival's website at vabook.org, that's O-R-G. And the cover story of this week's C-VILLE Weekly is on the Festival of the Book. We profiled some of the authors that are on panels throughout the week, and we also wrote 20 book review haikus for some of the books that we couldn't review because there's so many. So that was really fun for us. So you can find this on newsstands today. So who are these people with me? To my right, we have Preston Lauterbach, who will be discussing his latest book, Beale Street Dynasty, Sex, Song, and the Struggle for the Soul of Memphis. He'll be at Reading Under the Influence, Blues and Brews, talk from 9 to 11 p.m. Friday at Champion Brewing Company. And his first book, The Chitlin Circuit, was recognized as Book of the Year by the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, and NPR. And to his right, we have Jon Lohman, who is Virginia State Folklorist and Director of the Virginia Folklife Program at the Virginia Foundation for the Humanities. He is also an author of In Good Keeping, Virginia's Folklife Apprenticeships, and Jon will be serving as a moderator at Preston's talk on Friday. So we're here to give you a little preview of what to expect on Friday, what this book is about, and what went into the writing process for that book. So thank you guys for joining us and taking some time out on a busy, crazy Festival of the Book Week, so we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So tell us a little bit of background about yourself. I mean, are you from this area? What's the Memphis connection? Kind of where did this idea stem from?
Well, I am a Virginian born in Richmond and met the woman that I would marry at the University of Virginia. And she was from Memphis. And when we met, I was already very much attuned to Memphis culture. And when she said she wanted to move back, I said, well, I'll come with you. That sounds like a nice idea. So that's really where it started.
Okay. So how long were you there?
I spent 8 years there, working as a journalist, working as a writer, developing as a nonfiction author. And it is just a city that is full of stories. I mean, it is brimming. So much has happened there.
Right.
You can talk about the major historical headlines, the rise of Elvis, the assassination of Dr. King, the birth of the blues, the flourishing of rock and roll and soul music.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are the really exciting developments that got me into the culture once I arrived. And the beauty of it was that Memphis is such a laid-back place. You know, there were people there when I arrived in 2004 who had major megawatt star power who would be at the Walgreens, you know, getting their photos developed, you know, or grocery shopping, or, I mean, it's just not unusual to see somebody spectacular doing something normal there.
Right.
And so that to me made a great photographer by the name of Ernest Withers, who was probably he was one of the great visionaries of the civil rights movement. He took the iconic photograph of Dr. Martin Luther King riding on the front of the city bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Basically launched King as a national icon and a power figure. Sam Phillips was around, you know, Elvis Presley's discoverer. A man named Willie Mitchell, who produced much of the great soul music by the likes of Al Green in the 60s and 70s. So these were just normal people, and yet also spectacular people.
Yeah.
And in talking to them, I became hooked into the history and what the background of all of this incredible culture and all of these great developments were. And everything led back to this one legendary, bright, neon tourist trap that is called Beale Street.
So when did you start working on the research for this book?
Well, The research began in about 2009. In fact, I remember distinctly, it was President's Day weekend, 2009. And I became interested in this man named Robert Church, who was born a slave and eventually gained the renown, the title of being the South's first black millionaire. So I said, okay, this deserves some looking into. But still, I mean, it was 6 years from beginning the research to hardcover first edition. Other financial necessities intervening in between, but it was, something that was meant to be done slowly. As I mentioned to somebody earlier, I had more fun discovering the world and having it to myself than I have dealing with trying to condense it into this right here and make it digestible. It really is. It's a whole world unto itself that revealed itself to me very slowly through the characters, their stories, the historical documents that really make up the backbone of the research and the book.
So, history-wise, where are you getting your information? Is it delving into the historical society there, doing interviews with people that are descendants, or where did that all come from?
All of the above. Though there's no formal historical society. That's too much work.
Too much history.
Exactly, yes. But there are some great research centers there at the university and the public library. But I should say there is an important local connection to this research. The University of Virginia was instrumental in me mapping the Memphis red light district of the late 19th century. I don't think that's going to show up in the alumni magazine or anything, but it happens to be true.
Mr. Jefferson.
Well, I think he'd have been fine with it personally. I think he would have been straight down to Beale Street if it was available at that time. But that's just me. So I was a history graduate student at the university in the early 2000s, and this isn't sorcery. A couple of pieces of regular advice can go a long way, practical advice. And so there's a man there who needs no introduction named Ed Ayers, who said, you got to look into property ownership. I never thought about that before. I had no idea how you find that and what it means and what it can lead to. Well, that was what helped me to stitch together this dynasty that is the subject of this book, which was, I mentioned earlier, Robert Church's empire, and it was in the red light district where he developed all these saloons, gambling halls, brothels. Well, that was the beginning of the music and the culture that's become so profoundly associated with Memphis. Another great piece of advice that I got at the university came from a really nice guy in the history department named Chuck McCurdy, and he advised that I read another member of the history department's book, but I didn't like that guy, and I liked Chuck. So I decided to take his advice to look at city directories. I didn't know what a city directory was. So I started delving into these city directories. Well, they're magnificent. I mean, they completely reconstruct city streets, dwelling by dwelling, block by block, going back through the 1800s. And so it was pretty easy for me, once I got rolling on it, to reconstruct where the brothels were, where the saloons were, all of these things that I just would have thought impossible without those seeds of knowledge planted at the university.
Sure.
Yeah.
How did you get some of your anecdotes that are in the story? We were talking a little earlier. There are some minute details down to eye color, what someone was seeing when they were walking around.
I just made all that up. No, that comes from, again, the reconstruction of that world. So I know that a particular person was at a particular place on a particular day. I know what that person looked like. I can't sleep unless I get every last detail of the sound of their voice and their, like I say, their eye color together. For some reason, these little details just needle me, and I need to be able to present that in order to feel like I've done an accurate job in telling the story. But by the time I've got the character, and I've got the day, and I've got his or her movements, and then I just fall back on my block-by-block research based on boring things like deeds and directories, but they really come alive when you're able to connect that ancient real estate to historical figures. And I would say, if you go to Memphis today, much as you can probably find some red light activities, This particular district that's featured in this book does not exist anymore. There is not a remnant of it. There are very few true historical buildings on Beale Street, even though it's, promoted as this great historical draw. And so, my gosh, many a time I would drive down there needing to find this building where this, important dice tournament was held, or, where Handy bit certain, W.C. Handy heard a certain piano player who he borrowed some notes from. I always wanted to see these things, and they're just not there.
Yeah.
So I think that also gets back to my pursuit of the details. I really felt a profound need to know.
Right. What's the writing process like for something like this? Where do you start? Do you construct, each person's story and then weave it back together?
Right. Yeah, it's got to start with characters, I think, in order to engage readers. Readers don't want to know every last detail that, I loved digging out of the archives all those years. I recognize that you've got to really animate it through people who are identifiable, who folks can identify with. So yeah, it starts with the characters. This book, every book that I write takes on a life of its own. So this book was pitched as a 100-year plus history of Beale Street from after the Civil War through the most dramatic phases of the Civil Rights Movement. But once I got into the research, I identified these two major characters, Robert Church and his son, Robert Church Jr., and just told the story of them through their time frame. And lo and behold, it has a beginning, twists, turns, climaxes, dramatic moments, and it has an end. And I only discovered that once I got deeply into the research. So the book started off as a very broad idea. Let's take this interesting place, see what we find. Well, what I found ended up focusing it on an actual plot. And that's a plus for me.
What about the structure of the book? You broke it down into 4 different pieces. What does that look like?
Well, there were, as I said, the plot sort of revealed itself to me through the research. And one thing that I noticed was that there were dramatic high points followed by dramatic collapses, whether it be a bloody riot or a lynching or a political struggle of some kind. There were always moments of closure that required a rebound from. And so that really happened. If I can think of one example, it would probably be a brutal lynching that took place in the early 1890s. This is a time when Black Memphis was thriving. A lady named Ida B. Wells, one of the great American crusaders, went on to become a founder of the NAACP, was just a brilliant, tough journalist who, we could all benefit from. She was active on Beale Street. She really became herself on Beale Street. And there was a real sense of rising power in the Black community. We're talking about over 100 years ago in the South. It was a remarkable thing. There were politicians, Black politicians. There was a real sense of partnership between white Memphis and Black Memphis. And that all came to a dramatic and violent conclusion in a brutal lynching that caused at least 10,000 African Americans to leave the city, including Ida B. Wells, who was herself threatened with, very vicious punishment if she didn't stop writing about all of the evil things that were going on. And so Beale Street had to regain its equilibrium, had to replace all of these powerful people who went on. And so that was a recharge to the story. And sure enough, not long after that, people like W.C. Handy came to the city and took it to another level.
Great. So John, do you have any questions for Preston? If you're reading the book or anything that you might be touching on Friday?
Well, I just, to me, what I really found so compelling about the book, getting to it, I guess this isn't a question first, this is sort of my reaction, is, so many things. One is just the way you use this several block area, really as a lens into such large process that were happening in this country. That period of time after the Civil War, Reconstruction, is a time that I, personally, had only known much in very broad strokes, and to get this kind of real, intimate, intricate window into, taking it to a very personal level. You meet people sometimes in this book very quickly, and they're gone very quickly in a matter of sometimes pages. And I was very impressed, first of all, at how I became connected to these people very quickly, like in several paragraphs. And then often they meet just an absolutely horrific fate very quickly. And to put that kind of human face on that period, to me, was a revelation. It's just something that I hadn't really had before. Which might be my own fault, living here in the hub of Civil War writing. But that period after, I think, is an area that you don't hear as much. And then to have this character, this gentleman, Robert Church, former slave, eventually owning a brothel with white prostitutes, and to become, it's just an unbelievable story that you can think, several blocks. And my formative years of developing my career and interest were in New Orleans. I lived in New Orleans for a period of time, which I think there's so many parallels between those two cities, so many connections between the city and, Bourbon Street and Beale Street have, I think, you can talk about those two streets as to what they were and what they are now. So to me, that's, so much of that really is what grabs me about this book. I mean, I'm drawn to it musically as a folklorist here in Virginia. We have a blues and rhythm and blues legacy here that actually is really under-recognized compared to Memphis, New Orleans, Chicago, these places with the sound. What I've delved into and found out is that, Richmond had a sound. Norfolk had a very serious sound. A lot of the politics, and particularly racial politics, made it so that these were incredibly localized. Richmond's an amazing story. Mr. Wiggles, and these artists that he created, that produced, and it's just an incredible story. And I'm excited for Friday night program that we're doing at Champion Brewery.
Yeah.
And it's definitely kind of a departure. It's something that the book festival sort of got into last year. I hosted a program last year at C-VILLE Coffee featuring Wayne Henderson, who's a different Henderson than from where you're from. Wayne Henderson is a luthier and guitar builder and fingerstyle picker who has, from a little town, Rugby, Virginia, that he jokes is 7 people, population 7. But he's played in Carnegie Hall and National Heritage Fellowship. And combined him with an author, Beth Macy, who's a journalist at the Roanoke Times, who wrote a book called Factory Man, about a pretty amazing figure who fought this globalization that's moving all of these furniture jobs from that part of the world, Martinsville. And it just was and beer. And we had a wonderful beer up at brewery down in Parkway Brewery in Roanoke, created a beer specifically, Factory Girl, for this book. And so it was really neat evening, and to put the music and the author together, and Wayne's actually mentioned in her book as well as others. It was just a really fun night. We did it at the beginning of the festival. Yeah. This time we're moving it a little later. I don't know that there's ever been a Virginia Festival book program that's started at 9 p.m. And it's had, among other things, along with Preston, we're going to have Chris King, who I would guess many of your readers know about. Fascinating character, Grammy winning for both his notes and just his, he's a prodigious collector, 78, and just one of the most knowledgeable people about pre-war music and recording. And of course, so much of, a nice portion of that from Memphis, Memphis Mini and other. he will be there as well, sort of DJing with 78s, which is a really neat thing to see.
Yeah.
And then afterwards we have a dance party with Grits and Gravy, Robin and his partner, and and Robin, if you don't know Robin, he has a show on WTJU, Soulful Situation, I think we call it.
Rum Cove.
Rum Cove, and he's a character.
Yeah.
I can say that. I think you'll agree with that. He's a character. But his fascination, his obsession is with Memphis music and soul music of the South in general. But he really comes in around 1960s, really his area. And as you just mentioned, while you had planned to kind of delve into that era, the story really kind of culminates, I think, right around World War II.
Exactly.
So there's a window there. There's a black box there, I guess, that leads to where you're talking about to Al Green and all of these folks and Stax Records and High Studios, and so it's going to be a really neat night. And we try to appeal to all demographics with this festival.
Sure.
And we think reading is
Except
cool.
children. I don't think children are going to be there.
Probably not that evening, but there are a tremendous number of children's programming.
There you go.
And and a chance for the authors too. There's a lot of energy at this festival. These folks come, and we need a chance for them to shag a little bit too. Kind of have some beers and see what happens there. So it should be a really wonderful evening, and excited. I also want to say, that juxtaposition of different types of literature and then different types of music and literature. I mean, it's something that I think has always been part of this festival. I've been hosting panels for 15 years at the festival, and it's often very challenging for the moderator in that you'll have, deep academic history next to a guidebook for motorcyclists, the same region, or how the 300 authors in town, but I think you look for ways that they complement each other. You ask the question, how did you know what this person was thinking when they walked into the store? Well, as he said, I kind of made some of that up, but you're I guess you're extrapolating, right? I mean, you're kind of imagining yourself.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
So there's a lot of fiction, if you want to call it that, realistic fiction, I guess, or something in non-fiction. Just as there's so much
imagination.
Just as there's so much imagination. Just as there's so much reality and truth and
there you go.
In fiction. Yeah. So to make that work, but I guess after my rambling, my question would be, we've just been talking about exactly how Friday Night's Hotel, mixing in Chris's recordings and then this other thing. I mean, have you ever done anything like this before? And B, when it was presented to you, kind of what are your thoughts on that? Did you think it was something that...
I love it because I've had to do both on stage and in the crowd way too many author stand-in talks. They're death. They're death for the person up there. They're death for the people in the crowd. I'm done with it. And so just the opportunity to break that up is welcome to me, and I know it will be to the crowd too. Yeah, and so when you mix in some music, all of the Memphis sound is going to be represented there. You mix in some championship beers.
I was going to say, the more you drink, the better we sound. They would say that.
That is true. That is true.
And they have fine beers there if you haven't been to Champion Brewery. One of the many Renaissance or whatever you want to call it, Renaissance. I don't know if you ever had it before. What's happening with beer in this time.
Are you a blues music fan yourself?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the music is what drew me to Beale Street. Long before I set foot in Memphis, I was listening to the music from the place, and very fascinated with how one place could have fostered so many great artists and just so much depth and breadth of different musicians. Wonderful. All the way from swing music to lowdown blues. Beautiful sanctified music, which doesn't get quite enough credit, I think, came out of the city. There's a lot of conversation between all of these styles, a lot of ambition in the city based on its legacy. And Beale Street was at the heart of all of that, so it really fed I think, an important, culturally vital stream of American history and music.
How would you classify Beale Street now, these days? I'm not sure when the last time you visited was, but does it still have a remnant of this feeling? Is it still
I'll tell
there?
you what, a lot of the events that took place, a lot of colorful events depicted in this book, whether they be, dice games gone wrong, or bottle fights, brawls in the street, I was stunned at the number of headlines that I read from 1888 that could have been published yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So the spirit of Beale Street is not nearly what it was during its heyday, because the real identity of Beale Street was the main street of Black America. It was a time of total racial segregation, where every city in the South and throughout much of the rest of the country had its Black Main Street. That's what Beale was. But it became so much more powerful than just a local entity. And so, yeah, it's not that anymore. It's a tourist attraction. The street was mostly bulldozed during the phase of urban renewal in the late 60s and early 70s. Then it was revitalized when people figured out how to make a buck off of that identity, and reopened, with like a Pat O'Brien's, I think, more corporate type.
There's still good barbecue right on the corner there.
Well, it still smells like it did. You got cigarette smoke and spilled beer and that. I think it's oak that they use to smoke the barbecue. You can smell that oak smoke and that sweet, tangy sauce in the air. And hear some chicken frying. And hear some blues for sure. So, but it's not as authentic as it is original life.
Sure.
Well, I was also, it's the other thing, of course, Memphis, when you think of music, of course, the Fidel's, Sun Records, and everything that came out of there. And so you're talking about an area that I think is interesting, so segregated, but you could make an argument that it spawned not just, what we see in the blues and everything else, but rock and roll and American popular culture in general. I mean, you see that throughout African-American music traditions. I mean, that's kind of the story.
That's the dynamic.
American music. In fact, looking at, like I said, my focus is, since I've been here, has been Virginia. I mean, it all started with, Africans here in this country under very unusual and bizarre conditions. The banjo and the fiddle meeting here, the Tidewater, and so this has always been the story. But I think that's a really fascinating. I mean, the book doesn't touch on that, but I'm just curious about your, living there, and just, I think that's something that New Orleans, another parallel is the strength of African American, culture in all its forms, its folk life, and all its.
Definitely, but the roots Black music on Beale Street has been an inspiration to all of the most powerful and successful musicians to come from that area. I'll give you an example. W.C. Handy, who's known as the father of the blues, he's the man who really made this genre popular based on what he heard on the street. 100 years ago, published a song called Beale Street Blues. It was a huge hit. It was on Broadway. It was made into records. I mean, it was as big as a song could be during that time. What he did to develop that song is no different from what hip-hop artists do now. And that is he sampled. He listened to people singing out on the street corner. He listened to these low-down barrel house songs in these saloons where all the fights and the dancing was going on. He had a terrific ear. He would walk around and study on Beale Street all of the piano players and what they were doing. If he heard something he liked, he'd write it down on his shirt cuff. And he adapted all of those sounds, whether it be the guitarist at the train station in Tutwiler, Mississippi in 1904 playing slide, who inspired him. He was sampling. He took a bit of lyrics from the street, a bit of music from the saloon, he weaved it together, and he was able to present it to a much larger audience. That was the formula. Elvis did the same thing. He hung out in Beale Street clubs. I mean, all of his moves, his gyrating and his hip shaking and everything. People who were around on Beale Street back then said that was attributable to an exotic dancer that performed in a lot of the clubs. It's just that people watching Ed Sullivan, they couldn't go to Beale Street and watch this shake dancer do her thing. Elvis knew that. Just like W.C. Handy knew that these lowdown saloon piano players had no way of publishing a song to 100,000 people. Same dynamic.
So what's next for you? Do you have any other books percolating, or?
Percolating is probably a good word for it, yes. Yeah, I'm working on a sequel to this. Well, it started out as a sequel to this that's set in the 50s and 60s. As I said, I'll bite out the big chunk, and then I will find the most suitable storylines and roll with that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm working on a 60s era historical account of a bunch of insanity that went down in Memphis. Yes. After that, I'm going to Virginia, though.
Okay.
I can't live in Memphis any longer. I've got to come here. I got to do something that's locally relevant.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for talking
Thank
with us
you for having
today. Thank you, our audience out there in TV land watching C-VILLE Live. Their event is Friday night from 9 to 11 at Champion Brewery, Reading Under the Influence, Blues and Brews. Come out, hear some more about the book, mingle, listen to some 78s, some years.
Exactly. Yep.
And if you want to know any more information, again, go to vabook.org. Thanks.